Haiti becomes significant because it was the first time in human history that an enslaved population actually overthrew their oppressors.
The Haitian Revolution, though, was the most organized, the most large-scale, the most impressive in terms of structure and complication from the very beginning.
They are an example of what happens when people who are oppressed decide to stop being oppressed. This revolution was going on from the moment Africans touched the shores. That's very important to understand, because what also happened is that when Africans were brought to this island, many of the warriors from the Congo, from Yoruba, or what we call Nigeria, or from Ghana, when they were brought here, the Ashanti, they immediately escaped and created maroon towns. These maroon towns would later become the actual hubs of the revolutions, because many of them never really experienced being enslaved.
It's genocide. But we can see this from the fact that the slavery was so bad in the Caribbean that the populations were not even able to reproduce themselves.
And one of the things they used to do is bury us alive on an anthill, leaving your head so that you would slowly get tortured to death by ants eating your skull.
In the Caribbean, because there was a concentration of sugar plantations, which was the most brutal form of slavery, worse than cotton or indigo or coffee or tobacco, it was the most labor-intensive, and also the number of Africans versus the number of Europeans was much higher in the Caribbean. So island like Jamaica, island like Haiti, very mountainous, lend themselves to guerrilla warfare.
He was this extraordinary herbalist, and what he did, he taught the people of Haiti, the Africans, how to use the herbs and fauna in the ecology that they're now in to poison the food of the white farmers.
They had nature on their side, and that's very important. They used nature as one of their greatest weapons.
If you look at the statutes, the laws of a place like Georgia in the 1750s, contemporaneous with that revolt on Hispaniola, you'll find laws that are specifically seeking to restrain Africans from getting knowledge of plants, because it was feared that they had in mind a plot or a conspiracy similar to what unfolded in what is now Haiti in the 1750s.
Macandal, another great revolutionary, he poisoned the French. And the women were the ones that poisoned them when they would prepare foods. He killed over 6,000 European Frenchmen.
He says, we Africans are going to avenge the Taino folks, and we're going to get these white folks out of Haiti.
And so Macandal used his science, and I think he was a kind of pharmacologist in modern terms, but he used his science of understanding the natural world to begin to talk about how do we take that knowledge and free ourselves. And Macandal, he's sort of the spark of the Haitian Revolution.
Bookman and another enslaved African woman named Cecilia Fatima began the planning stages of the revolution. They went around the island and they organized a Congress to participate in the infamous Bois Cayman voodoo ceremony that occurred in an alligator swamp.
It was months of organizing and building up, and the person who was leading this organization was a Mambo, a female priestess by the name of Cecilia Fatima.
It should not be seen as surprising that some of the leading figures of the revolutionary process were said to be either believers or practitioners of this New World belief system that we refer to as Vodun or voodoo.
It's kind of going so far as to take the life of your oppressor is already there.
It was an African spiritual force that brought the people together. And when African people were brought together, it gave them a common goal. When they had a common goal, then they knew the common enemy. And then they would take care of their own business.
I mean, imagine if you're not scared of death, you're not going to be a good slave.
It really is a science of the spirit. And that this voodoo that they demonized, the demonization of it was intentional because they wanted to separate us from the very thing that gave us power.
But the white supremacists, they flipped that into something demonic where people are going to come out the ground and walk around and get you. And that's that boogeyman concept that they've created because of the Haitians rising up and getting revenge. And that's always been a scary thing for the white supremacists. African people rising up, getting revenge on them. That's the zombie mentality that they've created because that's their fear.
But the revolution continued with the people. And that's another lesson I learned about the Haitian Revolution. It wasn't so much the leaders, it was the people. The people never gave up the spirit.
It's our God who will give us the strength and the courage to beat this white man.
He is with you and will give you his strength, but you must act and free yourself.
Duddy Boukman is very intelligent, and he is going to assemble the forces, and he is going to instill in them a spirit of revolution.
Now get to it.
He comes from the form of just total understanding of what war is. You call on him when everything has been done that you've tried to do. You've been as diplomatic as you possibly can, but now it's time to get busy.
And that's a trick that African people have been falling for a long time. And the Haitian people, they didn't fall for that. They went to the voodoo, and in voodoo, there is no concept of forgiveness. And that's the thing that scared the white supremacists. We got to start thinking in terms of our African spiritual systems and in terms of survival.
This man only understands force. So only with force can we talk back to him. And some people started saying, well, but we don't have boats, we don't have guns, we don't have this, we don't have that. And one of the answers that was given is God has never created a creature and not give you a way to fight. Use it.
When it comes to guerrilla warfare, and this is what the Haitian Revolution is a lesson in, we have to understand how guerrilla warfare works. When you're going up against a superpower, you can't go head up. You have to attack the flanks. You have to attack from the back. And you have to learn how to weaponize everything. So the Haitians, they learn how to weaponize nature, weaponize rocks, weaponize trees, weaponize animals. Understand that, because when they had the first voodoo ceremony, they had that in an alligator swamp. Now, they knew that the white supremacists weren't going to no alligator swamp, but they were just so in touch with nature, they knew they needed to weaponize everything.
The War Council was August 14th. They decided the revolution would start a week from there. When there was no more stones in your hand, then Coupetet Boulikai burned it all down.
It's another big propaganda lie that they like to promote.
Something happened a long time ago in Haiti. They were under the heel of the French. You know, Napoleon III and whatever. And so the devil said, okay, it's a deal. And they kicked the French out. You know, the Haitians revolted and got themselves free. But ever since, they have been cursed by one thing after the other, desperately poor.
You would rather give credit to Satan than a group of African people who really put in the work and got rid of the French.
The only reason the revolution had to start earlier, the rebellion had to start earlier, was because on the 21st, somebody struck early. And slave masters captured someone, tortured someone, and were warned that there was a rebellion coming. So they decided to strike early.
And part of that answer rests with the question of guerrilla warfare. That is to say, trying to avoid, whenever necessary, face-to-face confrontations of one military brigade facing another military brigade, but harassing the invading forces, who, after all, oftentimes are not very familiar with the geography.
Main leaders sat down and planned a week before, maybe months before that, had their dinner. The crazy part about it is that the Europeans knew that their privileged slaves were meeting for dinner, and they didn't think anything of it. They were so utterly convinced that black people were never going to do anything about their situation, could never overthrow them.
You know, all of these things they used against these forces because these forces could not fight a guerrilla-type warfare.
But at the same time, it forms a form of martial arts, a form of self-defense, where when it's time to rise for the revolution, the masters didn't even know that you was already training a bunch of troops, and now you're ready to go.
Boukman war on the colony and occupied more than a third of the colony. Everybody had only one thing: find Boukman and stop this. And we had no weapons. They had the guns, they had the cannons, they had everything. And yet, the fear.
So Boukman, one of the great leaders, he was eventually captured, he was eventually killed. And when they got Boukman, they wanted to make an example out of Boukman so they could scare all the other people from rebelling. So the legend was they got Boukman's head, decapitated him, and put his head on a stick, and put it out in the public so that everybody could see it as a way to scare them. But at this point, people got rid of that fear of dying. So the rumor was people would walk past the head, see the head and say, they rub their head and say, we're going to carry on the revolution.
One of the fascinating things about the Haitian Revolution is how little pride human beings outside the African diaspora have taken in it, which is fascinating to me, because this is an event of universal human significance, the only successful slave revolution in the whole history of humanity.